There is a passage in Ezekiel where God speaks about a tree whose leaves are for the healing of nations. Most people read that as poetry. But when researchers began cataloging the specific plants named throughout biblical scripture, from the wilderness accounts in Exodus to the agricultural instructions in Deuteronomy, they found something that stopped them cold. These were not decorative details. The foods described across thousands of years of text were nutritionally and pharmacologically accurate. Ancient people living in brutal climates, without hospitals or pharmaceutical supply chains, figured out how to keep themselves functioning at a level that modern chronic disease statistics make almost impossible to believe. And they left that record inside the most widely read book in human history. Today, we are going through 10 of those foods. Not symbolically, scientifically. Because what is inside these foods is real, documented, and something your body still responds to in exactly the same way it always has. Stay with us through this entire list. Because number 6 contains a compound so effective at fighting inflammation that pharmaceutical researchers have studied it as a drug candidate. And number 1 involves a passage so precise about human nutrition that when scientists analyzed it as a complete system, they found something almost impossible to attribute to coincidence. 10 foods. Let us find out what they actually knew. Number 10. Olive oil. The liquid that runs through everything. You cannot get through the first 5 books of scripture without running into olive oil. It anoints kings, lights the temple menorah, and is woven into every major ceremony throughout the ancient world. But what the people pouring that oil over their food every single day were doing was something modern cardiology has spent decades trying to engineer into a pill. Extra virgin olive oil contains a natural compound called oleocanthal. And oleocanthal inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes targeted by ibuprofen. Same pathway. Same reduction in the signaling molecules that drive chronic inflammation. Without the side effects. Without the stomach damage that comes with long-term pharmaceutical use. Multiple large population studies consistently link high olive oil consumption to dramatically lower rates of cardiovascular disease, reduced systemic inflammation, and significantly better cognitive function in older age. Real olive oil is not a cooking fat. It is medicine that happens to taste extraordinary. The ancient world poured it over everything. That was precision, not indulgence. Number 9. Pomegranate. The fruit carved into the walls of the temple. When Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, craftsmen carved pomegranates into the pillars. The high priest's robe was decorated with them. This fruit was embedded into the most sacred architecture in the ancient world before anyone had analyzed what was inside it. Modern science eventually caught up. Pomegranates contain a set of compounds called elagitannins. When these reach the digestive tract, gut bacteria convert them into urolithin A, a substance that appears to trigger a cellular cleanup process where damaged mitochondria are cleared and replaced. This is a genuine biological renewal mechanism. Beyond that, pomegranate juice has been shown in controlled trials to reduce blood pressure, improve arterial flexibility, and lower key inflammatory markers. Its antioxidant concentration outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries. Combined, generation after generation of people built this fruit into their most sacred spaces because they watched what happened to people who ate pomegranates consistently versus those who did not. Sometimes the most reliable data comes from the longest observation periods. Number 8. Figs. The medicine a prophet prescribed to a dying king. This detail is buried in 2 Kings and most people walk right past it. King Hezekiah is dying from a severe infection. The prophet Isaiah does not only pray. He instructs the attendants to press a poultice of figs directly onto the wound. The king recovers. Modern biochemistry eventually found out why. Figs contain an enzyme called phycin that actively breaks down damaged tissue, the precise biological problem an infected wound creates. They also contain compounds with documented antimicrobial activity. Isaiah was not guessing. He was working from accumulated knowledge about what this fruit did to infected tissue. Eaten as food, figs are among the most mineral-dense fruits available. High in magnesium, potassium, calcium, and B vitamins, in concentrations that functioned as a nutritional supplement in a world without supplements. Their pectin fiber feeds beneficial gut bacteria in ways that reduce systemic inflammation over time. A handful of figs eaten regularly was doing work in the body that most modern multivitamins cannot replicate. Number 7. Garlic. The food they grieved in the wilderness. In Numbers 11, the Israelites reach a point of genuine anguish. When they list the specific foods they are mourning from Egypt, garlic is named directly. Grown adults, recently freed from slavery, are weeping for this food by name. Once you understand what garlic does to the immune system, their grief is not dramatic. It is entirely rational. When a clove is crushed, an enzyme called alliinase reacts with a compound called alliin and produces allicin within seconds. This reaction only happens when the cell wall is physically broken. Whole garlic sitting untouched is pharmacologically inert. Crush it, and it becomes something else entirely. Allicin is one of the broadest spectrum natural antimicrobials ever identified. It disrupts bacterial membranes, interferes with viral replication, shows activity against fungi and parasites, and attacks multiple biological pathways simultaneously, which is precisely why pathogens have such difficulty developing resistance to it. Controlled trials confirm that regular garlic consumption reduces both frequency and duration of illness, meaningfully lowers blood pressure, and reduces harmful LDL cholesterol. Egyptian medical texts cataloged garlic in over 20 separate therapeutic preparations. The Israelites eating it daily were maintaining a layer of biological defense that vanished when their food supply changed. That loss was what they were grieving. One detail worth knowing. Allicin is heat sensitive. Let crushed garlic rest 10 minutes before applying heat. Raw is always more potent. Number 6. Turmeric. The root that challenged a pharmaceutical industry. Turmeric traveled the ancient trade routes of the Middle East for thousands of years. It appears in Egyptian medicinal preparations and in the aromatic compounds used across the biblical world for healing. The root is unmistakable. Brilliant orange-yellow, intensely pigmented, with a bitterness that signals biological activity. The primary active compound is curcumin. And curcumin inhibits a molecular pathway called NF-κB, one of the central switches that controls inflammation throughout the body. When this switch stays permanently on, the result is the chronic, low-grade inflammation now understood to drive heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, and several forms of cancer. Curcumin turns it off. Multiple clinical trials show meaningful reductions in inflammatory markers with curcumin supplementation. Research has found results comparable to standard anti-inflammatory medications for joint pain. Neuroscience labs are actively investigating its potential for protecting neural tissue from the oxidative damage associated with cognitive decline. One critical detail. Consumed with black pepper, which contains a compound called piperine, curcumin absorption increases by up to 2,000%. The ancient world combined these spices instinctively. Modern pharmacokinetics has since confirmed that combination was not accidental. And if this kind of content is genuinely useful to you, the kind that connects what ancient people actually knew to what science is now confirming, take a second right now and subscribe. There is more coming that you genuinely do not want to miss. Number 5. Honey. Unfiltered. Exactly as Proverbs described it. Proverbs 24 verse 13 says it plainly. Eat honey, for it is good. The ancient world did not consume honey the way most people do today. They did not heat it, clarify it, or strip it of the compounds that make it biologically active. They ate it raw. That difference is everything. Raw honey contains hydrogen peroxide generating enzymes, defensin 1 proteins, and osmotic properties that create an environment almost no pathogen can survive. Modern wound care research has produced clinical trials using medical-grade honey on infected wounds that were not responding to standard antibiotic treatment, with results significant enough to drive ongoing medical investigation. Beyond wound healing, raw honey contains prebiotic compounds that selectively feed beneficial gut bacteria. It carries antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties and documented antimicrobial effects against over 60 species of bacteria. The honey in most supermarket bottles has been heated and filtered to the point where many of these properties are reduced or eliminated. The ancient world knew the difference. Proverbs was not praising a condiment. It was describing a medicine. Number 4. Lentils. The birthright meal. In Genesis, Esau trades his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. A man who has come in from the field, genuinely exhausted, desperate enough to trade something of enormous value for a single meal, is reaching specifically for lentils. Not bread. Not meat. Lentils. This is complete plant-based protein in practice. Lentils deliver all essential amino acids, high fiber content that dramatically reduces blood sugar response, and a mineral profile covering iron, folate, magnesium, zinc, and potassium in a single bowl. The resistant starch in lentils reaches the colon largely intact, where it feeds specific bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids. Those fatty acids reduce systemic inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and maintain the integrity of the gut lining that protects the bloodstream from inflammatory triggers. Long-term population research consistently identifies eating legumes daily as the single dietary habit most reliably linked to healthy aging across cultures worldwide. Not a supplement. Not a program. Beans eaten faithfully, day after day. Esau's body knew exactly what it needed. His instincts were right. Number 3. Cumin. The spice Jesus named directly. In Matthew 23, Jesus rebukes the Pharisees for tithing their mint, their dill, and their cumin down to the last seed. You do not formally tithe something nobody values. Cumin was being taxed as a temple commodity. That tells you it was considered genuinely precious. Modern research has studied each of its traditional uses in controlled settings. Cumin contains compounds with documented antimicrobial activity against a range of bacteria and fungi. Studies have examined its effects on blood sugar regulation, with evidence suggesting support for improved insulin sensitivity. Its influence on digestive enzyme activity may explain why the ancient world reached for it consistently at the first sign of digestive disruption. And nutritionally, less than a teaspoon of cumin provides roughly 20% of the daily iron requirement. In a world where iron deficiency was a constant threat to people performing hard physical labor, that is not a trivial contribution. Less than a teaspoon. Formally taxed. Named directly. The Pharisees were wrong about a great many things. About the value of cumin, they were right. Number 2. Barley. The bread of ordinary people that outperforms everything. When Jesus feeds 5,000 people in the Gospel of John, the loaves are made from barley. Not wheat. Barley. The grain of fishermen and laborers. The everyday bread of people who could not afford anything more refined. And it turns out the people eating the cheapest grain were eating the most cardiovascular protective one. Barley contains the highest concentration of a fiber called beta-glucan found in any grain on Earth. The FDA has formally approved a health claim for food products containing it because the evidence is that consistent. It forms a slow-moving gel inside the digestive tract that simultaneously slows glucose absorption after meals, binds to LDL cholesterol and carries it out before reabsorption, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and stimulates immune cell activity. Clinical comparisons between barley and oats, already considered gold standard for heart health, consistently show barley outperforming oats on post-meal blood sugar response. The fishermen eating barley bread daily were running a continuous cardiovascular and metabolic intervention with every meal, without ever calling it that. Number 1. The 7 sacred foods of Deuteronomy. The meal commanded in Scripture. And here is the one that changes how you read all the others. Deuteronomy 8 verse 8. God is speaking to Moses about the promised land. Rather than describing it in general terms, the text becomes precise. 7 specific foods are named. Not a region. Not a climate. 7 foods listed by name. Wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. Scholars have read this passage for millennia as a description of agricultural fertility. That reading is not wrong. But modern nutritional science has noticed something else entirely. These 7 foods together form one of the most complete nutritional systems ever assembled in a single meal. And the way they interact is almost impossible to attribute to coincidence. Wheat and barley together supply complementary proteins, beta-glucan fiber, and sustained energy that carries the body through hours of physical and mental work without blood sugar disruption. Grapes deliver natural compounds that activate the body's own cellular repair processes and protect the cardiovascular system at multiple levels simultaneously. Figs supply the specific minerals, magnesium, potassium, calcium, that the grains and fruits do not provide in sufficient quantities. They fill nutritional gaps as though the list was designed with those gaps specifically in mind. Pomegranates bring antioxidant concentration that outranks virtually every other fruit, alongside compounds the gut converts into powerful anti-inflammatory agents. Olives, eaten whole rather than just pressed, deliver oleocanthal alongside monounsaturated fats that make every other fat-soluble nutrient in this combination dramatically more bioavailable. The olives do not just contribute their own nutrition. They unlock the nutrition of everything surrounding them. Dates provide rapid natural energy alongside fiber that prevents blood sugar spikes, tannins with antimicrobial activity, and potassium for blood pressure stability. When researchers analyze these 7 foods as a complete system, they find that each one provides what the others lack. The protein gaps in the grains are covered by the amino profiles of the fruits. The fat-soluble vitamins from the olives are delivered alongside water-soluble vitamins from the fresh produce. The anti-inflammatory compounds from multiple sources appear to work synergistically, producing effects that exceed what any single ingredient generates alone. Deuteronomy was not just mapping fertile land. It was preserving a prescription. And 3,000 years later, cardiologists, oncologists, and gut health researchers keep arriving at the same place the ancient world was already standing. 10 foods. All of them pointing toward the same conclusion. That the gap between what we spend on health today and what we actually eat is not a modern innovation. It is a very old forgetting. Pick one food from this list. Bring it into your kitchen this week. Not as a supplement. Just as food, the way it was always meant to be eaten. Drop it in the comments below. I genuinely want to know which one you are starting with. And if you got something real from this video, hit the like button and subscribe so you are here for what comes next. Because we are just getting started.